this.
You're a godsend, Ted Lasso.
Thanks one to no one. Ooh, I like this.
Brilliant.
This is why it's hard to love you.
You heard it right. He loves you. I believe in hope. I believe in belief.
We'll die for you, coach.
That's a little dramatic, but I see how you got there.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sublime Primetime 2021 Writing for Comedy Series panel, co-presented by the Writers Guild Foundation and Writers Guild of America West in partnership with Final Draft and Variety. I'm Gloria Calderon Kellett, and I will be your moderator today. Before we meet our fabulous panel, let's take a look at the work that has earned them their Emmy nominations for Outstanding Writing for Comedy. All right, so let me introduce our panelists. First up, we have Lucia Aniello, Paul W. Downs, and Jen Statsky for Hacks, HBO Max. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
We have Brendan Hunt from Ted Lasso, Apple TV Plus.
Hello.
We have Meredith Scardino from Girls 5 Eva for Peacock.
Hello.
And we have Steve Yockey for The Flight Attendant, HBO Max. Hi, you guys.
Hey.
Welcome, welcome. It's very exciting. When they asked me to do this panel, I had legitimately seen all of your shows because you've gotten me through this pandemic. So thank you all, because comedy is always needed. And yeah, seen them all start to finish before I was even asked. So I'm very excited as a fan to get to talk to you guys today about these wonderful shows that you've all made. So first up, let's start with Lucia talking about, and Paul talking about what was it like being a showrunner this year for 2021, making comedy? Because during COVID and during Zoom rooms, and this is especially hard to do comedy this way. So talk to us about what that was like.
Yeah, it was really, really, really easy.
Yeah, it was going easy.
No problems. Couldn't have been better.
The commute was great. The start-stop of you go, no you go in a Zoom writer's room was really simple.
No, in all honesty, I think, season one of any show is obviously a huge challenge just because you're trying to get everybody on the same page, from the writing to the production to even post and doing that, digitally over Zoom. Obviously took more conversations, I think, just because you weren't able to necessarily all be, see what I mean? But Jen and Paul and I spend pretty much every waking minute together. So that made it a little easier. But I guess we're going to do another one during the pandemic. So,
yeah. Jen, do you want to chime in with the?
Yeah, I mean, they are exactly right. It was a real challenge. And I think particularly for a first season show, which some of you guys, or I guess all of us have too, like that was really the challenge, is because when you've been in a room with people, there's like a rhythm and you understand each other. And so if it had been like for Good Place season 4, I think it would have been easier, but because it was a new show and a whole new group of people, like that made it an extra challenge of figuring out everybody's rhythms and how people interact with each other. So yeah, it was certainly a challenge.
And Brendan, how did you guys find it?
Well, we wrote pre-COVID. We did all the writing in 2019, and then a bunch of posts in 2020. Yeah, once we started writing season 2, that was all COVID, but I imagine that's not germane to this particular conversation. But we were in a room together, we had snacks, there was LaCroix, there was everything.
I mean, favorite LaCroix, that should be a question later on. Meredith, what about you? How was it?
I mean, I was like, okay, I get my show, we're going to do it over Zoom, we'll just figure it out. And it is like hard to read facial cues. I'm sure some jokes that were great and would have done really well in a room when you were together just went away and disappeared into mist because you can't really see people. Like sometimes you're like, show me that you like this, like 2 thumbs up, like big smile, laugh, like a lot of people are sort of exaggerating their laughter because it's so hard to kind of read emotions on Zoom. And also some people I worked with, on season 1 of the show, I still have not met in person. The LA, one of the things that was kind of cool is that I got to work with LA writers that I wouldn't normally ever get to work with because the show's in New York. But I have not met them in person. And it's crazy because you do somehow end up finding a rhythm over Zoom and all that, but it's kind of, and sometimes when you meet somebody, you're like, I pegged you as a different height. It's messing with my brain somehow. But it works. Like I always say, like using Zoom is like straining spaghetti through a baseball hat. Like it works, but it's not necessarily the best way to write a show, but you can do it. I think it just takes a little bit more time.
Great. That's a great theory. Steve, what about you?
We had our entire writer's room pre-pandemic for season 1, and we got about 5 episodes of our 8 episodes finished filming, and luckily all of our international work. And then we had to shut down on the second day of episode 6, and we came back in August, September, October, as soon as they opened New York, and we finished. But our entire second season has been Zoom. We just finished the writer's room for season 2, and it was sort of how everyone's described it.
You know what? I think it messes with room bits. Can't do a room bit on Zoom.
So there's none. There's almost none.
Yeah, like falling out of chair. I guess you could fall out of a chair. But...
You'll fall out of frame, which
yeah.
is,
it really
we sometimes do fake freeze,
Yeah.
Also, weirdly, I miss being able to like walk into people's offices and like workshop little things before you go kind of take them to the room and stuff like that. That part is missing from Zoom.
Yeah, the side conversations, right? Like little, yeah. But here we are, still making people laugh, you guys. So in these last 18 months, how has it impacted how you guys, or has it impacted how you guys tell stories, or what kinds of stories you guys want to tell in comedy? Jump in. Or I'll call on you. Let's go backwards. Steve, you take this one first.
Oh, wow. Okay. I think that it has made us, or just myself as a showrunner, for like our major themes and the major stories that we're dealing with, I wanted to lean even heavier into the sort of odd escapism of our show, so that it kind of does the job it's supposed to do and gets people back out into the world in a way that, everybody's kind of like bristling against this kind of like looming second wave of this thing. What's that going to be? So I think for us, we tried to go even bigger, and also with the more exaggerated with the comic situations, because I think anything that can get people out of sort of, we're all thinking about this every day. It kind of is always running in the background, like in that little reptile part of your brain. There's like that piece that we would normally as writers use to like develop ideas. It's filled up with like what's happening to the world. And so I think it's nice to be able to give people a break from that.
Definitely. Let's go backwards, Meredith.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree that I feel like our show has like a kind of a joyful undercurrent, and that really felt very palpable when we were filming it during this pandemic, and at a time when you couldn't hear live music, and we would be on set and hear music, and it just like makes you feel all the feelings. And so I think the show just feels like a joyful I don't know, like bag of Skittles. In a dark puddle, a bag of Skittles in a dark puddle.
Oh yeah, that's what you want in a dark puddle. Bag of, that's such a great. You're really good at the really imagery.
Oh, thanks.
Also the earworms in Girls Five Eva. Gonna be famous, but I couldn't stop. I legitimately, when I say I watched all the shows, I really did, you guys. Let's go. Yeah. So Brendan, how about you guys? Has it affected anything?
No, and it was a semi-conscious decision for that, but also the calendar kind of decided for us, because we wrote and shot in 2019. And then the pandemic came along and we were writing season 2. And yeah, we knew that then season 2, by that happenstance, wouldn't be coming out until, late summer 2021, by which time the pandemic was sure to have been handled. So, and if it wasn't going to be handled by then, we're like, well, we'll just keep being the island away from this. We live in a universe that that somehow, got to miss all this. So we haven't had to adjust too much, but at the same time, season 2 is a rather darker than season 1. So maybe some of it's seeping in anyway.
And then Paul, Lucia, and Jen.
Yeah, I don't know if we can ever really know in a way. Like, I don't think we're consciously making choices that are pushing against anything.
And also the show, we did conceptualize the show 6 years ago. And so we've had a lot of time to think about it. And in that way, a lot of it was developed before the pandemic. But also I think because of the pandemic, we were almost pushing against that. And that we were like, let's pretend it never happened, never existed. It's about live comedy. It's about big Las Vegas shows.
Yeah.
So let's absolutely ignore it if we can and try and forget about it.
Yeah, I think we tried really hard to even though we had to adjust so much about the way the show is made, like make it feel a little bit escapist as well. Like you're saying, Steve, like when you watch it, we really wanted people to A, not remember the pandemic existed, but B, never be like, oh yeah, this was shot during COVID. So I think we tried as hard as we could to actively make sure it wasn't showing up in the storytelling and in the way the show is made.
And because this is such an awesome, rare grouping of all first season shows that are all nominated, you guys, that's so impressive. Because it's so hard to make a show. And it's so hard to make it good. And you guys did that right out of the gate, which is impressive. So can you guys take us through, I think that people watching would really love to hear, what was the process of getting each of these shows sold and made? Can you give us sort of the briefest version of that?
Sure, I'll start. I basically started developing the idea. My producing partners on the project are Tina Fey, Robert Carlock. Came up with the idea, pitched them the concept. They were on board, gave me a few notes. We decided I had a pitch.
This was when?
This was in 2019.
2019. Okay.
In the summer. And I decided, we decided the best route forward. Like I had a whole pitch, the series, the season arc, all the characters, all that stuff. I made a fake CD that I wrapped in cellophane that had a fake track list and all the stuff. But we decided the best route forward. I had worked with Tina and Robert on Kimmy Schmidt for many years. And we thought, it's like, I should just write the pilot, like before anyone's seen it, before anyone's attached anything. So that when we pitch it, I can do a weird, awkward pitch, whatever. And then you just like leave the script behind. And so then the networks, the streamers can all read it. And there's no like confusion about what you're attempting to buy, what you might buy. So if you like it, you buy it. If you don't like it, it's not for you, fine. So I thought it was a great way as a first-time showrunner to really like show my voice and to also get whoever bought it know what they're buying so that they're not trying to turn it into something else in the process of developing it. I mean, other shows have been developed successfully that way a million times over, but for me, I felt happy knowing that I was going in with a script that I was proud of and a product I was proud of, so that it was just like, there it is. And then, we got a series order from Peacock, and then we were just kind of off to the races, and we had to cast it and write it over Zoom. Like, so I sold it without any talent attached, which was a little bit weird, but they went for it. So I was really excited to have a partner that believed in the project.
So great. Brendan?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the main lesson for any aspiring writers out there of the Ted Lasso experience is if you want to have a show on TV, pick when you want it to be on TV, and then 7 years earlier, do a commercial. But make sure the commercial is a slightly shallower version of what you plan on doing to give yourself room. Yeah, ours was a commercial first in 2013. We had no more future in mind for it than 3 days in London. And then they had us come back and do it again the next year. And that was fun. And at that point, me and Jason and Joe Kelly, who were the creators at that point, were like, this should be more. This should be something. And so we met up at Jason's place and we wrote a pilot and we beat out a season. We were thinking of like UK style stuff at that point. So it was a 6-episode season, and then had a notion for another season and maybe a special. And then instead of going straight into that, we did nothing on it for about 4 years. Oh, well, Jason and Joe did plenty of other things. And I did, things here and there in LA, plays and one-man shows, without the burden of financial success or prominence. And and then one day, Jason was like, "Hey, is that Ted Lasso stuff still online?" Which is another way of saying, "Hey, I don't know how Google Docs work. Can you explain those to me?" He's like, "Yeah, man, they're online." Because he was having lunch with Bill Lawrence the next day, and he wanted to pitch it to him. And so once Bill Lawrence got involved, then things moved very quickly. We wrote a pilot. We finished the pilot as a foursome, and then Jason and Bill went and sold it, and then we had a writer's room going like a month later. So I don't know that that's a duplicatable process, but that's the one we got.
Oh, that's great. Steve, what about you?
Our story is a little different. Kaylee basically found the book, and then Kaylee went to Warner Brothers and said, "I would like to be in a television show based on this book," and they said yes. And then Kaylee went to the network, which at the time was called Warner Media Streaming, and no one knew exactly what it was. And the network said yes. And then they put out a search for writers to adapt the book. And the cover letter, when they send you a book, they always send you a cover letter of like, now that you've read the book, here's what we want to do differently. And the letter said, we'd like it to be stranger, funnier, something like Crime and Punishment meets Fleabag. And I thought that was an insane thing to ask for, but then I also thought, okay, so they're open to weird. So I decided I would take a pretty big swing, and then people just kept saying yes. So it was a very cool process in that I didn't think I was going to get past the first step. So yeah, and then we made it.
Wow. And then Paul and Lucia and Jen, what was the journey?
So kind of a similar thing to what Brendan was saying about a long journey to it. But before I tell that, I do want to say that Brendan, I was at one of your one-man shows in that 7-year period where you played Pigpen, and I believe you hula hooped for the entire show. So I just want to put it out there that people were seeing your work.
You saw that show.
I saw that show, man. I was there.
Delightful.
But as far as Hacks goes, we, Paul Lucci and I met doing comedy at UCB, Upright Citizens Brigade in New York. And we've been friends for a long time, and we have worked on Broad City together, and we always kind of just work together because I beg them to bring me along on everything they do, basically. And we beg her. And we were on this road trip in Maine in 2015. Paul was shooting a sketch special for Netflix called The Characters. Lucci and I were along for the ride just to like pitch jokes and help out. And we started talking about the character of Deborah Vance on the ride up there, and just wanting to tell a story about female comedians of a certain generation and the difficult path that they've had. And that idea, this was 2015, it just kind of like stuck in our brains for years and years. And we were all pulled in different directions, working on different things. So we never really had the right moment to go out and pitch it, but we just kept it, like the idea stuck with us. We just kept having ideas for it, like sending each other emails whenever we would be together socially, it would come up. And then finally in 2019, we were at a point where we're like, okay, we're ready to like, we can devote the time that this idea requires to it. So we went out and we pitched it. And similar, Steve, like HBO Max at the time was the Warner Media streaming. No one knew what it was going to be called. No one really knew what it was. But we pitched it there, and Susanna Macos like loved it and got it, and we were lucky enough to find a home there and make the show.
And similarly, we actually didn't. I think Meredith said this, that we didn't actually have any actors attached when we sold it.
So all of these shows are technically on streamers. Do you think that your show could be on a network? Any of your shows?
Not mine.
Bravery.
Yeah. But a version that just has, I mean, it's interesting to me that all of this really creative stuff seems to be happening more so in the streaming space. And why do you guys think that is?
Well, I would say, I think my show could, we blurred Paula's boob and we can change some of the curse words, but like, I think it could be, family friendly, network safe. But I think in our case, it was like time, because we have musical numbers and we pack a lot into our scripts. So, cutting down to 21 and a half minutes, I think would be a challenge for us. So a streamer just gives us like so much more, just so many more ways to go. And then we also did a fun thing where we would put the full versions or the extended versions of the songs from the show in the credit sequence. And then we did an album from those. So that's the kind of thing that you couldn't necessarily do on a network. But it's not necessarily like NC-17 or something like that.
The time thing is huge, I think, like the luxury in streaming of being able to let the story decide how long the story is going to be is I can't imagine wanting to do the get it on 22 minutes version. And as to whether we could be on a network besides that, it's like, well, we do say fuck a lot, and we like saying fuck because that's how people talk. And I we don't have Paula's boob, but we had that cursing and we stand by it. So yeah, I wouldn't want to change anything about it.
Yeah. And Hacks, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't know. Every once in a while, listen, Arrested Development was on Fox. I don't know. Things can happen. People can make choices. And and coming from doing stuff more in like Comedy Central and doing things like you guys are saying, 21 minutes is so short. But sometimes I think brevity really helps comedy too. I don't know. I don't know. I think that I don't necessarily think Hacks specifically would make a lot of sense on a network, but I don't know. Maybe networks are ready to be doing kind of more niche stuff. Who am I to say what they want? But I don't know.
It's interesting. It's interesting to see. Yeah, Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, like coming from Broad City or like Parks and Rec, like coming from network shows or shows that were on networks like that, like you do learn, I think, about, like Lucia is saying, how brevity is so important to comedy. And like, so I think the rhythms of comedy that you learn when you work on network shows that have to be cut down to 21:30 or whatever is helpful. But I do think that once you've experienced exactly what we're all talking about, that thing of like getting, like, it can be longer and you can like follow different character storylines because you have the time to, it's really hard to go back on that.
It's addicting.
Yeah, time being the biggest one, absolutely. So a lot of you have these major stars that are the leads of your shows. How involved are they in forming these characters?
Well, Jason is, this is his brainchild, really. Even though there's 3 and then 4 creators of this is all coming out of Jason. He's in the writer's room basically all the time, which I know is not always the case. But he's not decoratively a writer. Like this is his baby and his vision, and it's a good thing he doesn't suck with all that stuff. But but yeah, he's kind of the final arbiter on basically everything.
And then
Yeah, Jean is not, in the writer's room, but I do think that the character of Deborah Vance is such a big force in our show. And if you don't have the gravitas that Jean Smart carries, I think the show falls apart. So just, I think the fact that she's able to give so much of herself to the character and breathe so much life into it. I mean, the show couldn't be as realistic because, to be a person, a fictional famous person is pretty hard to pull off. She's able to do it. And to me, that's the reason that the show works.
I think that for us, it's Kaylee obviously is an EP on the show, but she's not hanging out in the writer's room, but that character wouldn't exist without her. The show tap dances through several different tonal shifts every 5 minutes. And I think that you have to have actors with that facility. She has it. She brings it to Cassie, Rosie, Zasha. I mean, we were lucky that we got a lot of people with real chops in all directions because we're writing a comedy that's also a thriller. So you have to be able to toggle back and forth between like the screwball, like full out comedy and then actually being worried about them.
Yeah, and our cast is, not in the writer's room, but very involved, like on set, we always have conversations, and after table reads, we have conversations and stuff. And Paula Pell's a writer, so sometimes she has amazing ideas or improv on the day that really informs the characters. Her character, Sarah Bareilles, was kind enough to write us the song 4 Stars that the season 1 culminates in, which was such a cool collaboration. And just like, the whole cast is amazing. Like Renee and Busy are just, I think both of their characters are very big, and they have the chops and the humanity inside to make them feel more 3D than maybe they might feel on the page. Renee's character Wiki is, pretty big narcissist, and she imbues her with like a humanity and an empathy that is just makes you like her so much, even if she's acting a little bit absurd. But so I feel like our cast, absolutely, it's like so many things have to go right for a show to be something. And in my case, I feel like, oh my gosh, our cast just brought the whole thing to life in a way that I think is just amazing.
Yeah, there's such an alchemy that has to happen for all of
Yeah.
these shows. And all of your shows also have great side characters. So that really adds so much comedy to the main, to the main characters' POVs. So is some of that stuff that you guys bring, or what are your writers' rooms like in terms of point of view and how they sort of fill out all of the, not just the main characters, but the side characters?
Yeah, I mean, our writer's room, we were very purposeful in wanting to get voices that were different from our own and different perspectives. And so we're really blessed and lucky with the writers we get to work with in that regard. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily that any one person writes for this character or anything like that, but I think it just allowed us, the intention was always to make this world feel really full and never just have it be oh, it's a show about Deborah Vance and all these people are just in service of her. The idea was to always give every character a full life and world and arc. And so it gets, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't allow other perspectives in your room, because, there is a limitation at a certain point to what you can write. And so, yeah, it was just a really kind of beautiful thing coming together of having these wonderful actors and wanting to tell the full stories for these characters. And then, yeah, having writers who could speak to specific experience that Paul, Lucia, and I couldn't really.
Very cool. Yeah. And also, guys, I commend you on stand-up that was funny. That's it. I mean, I was a stand-up. And so I think stand-ups watch shows and are oh, they're doing stand-up. And then the stand-ups are not being funny. Man, Jean Smart could have been a stand-up, it's really it was really impressive, both those women, how funny they were and how you were like, oh yeah, I buy it completely. And having that perspective of being a woman in comedy and what they're facing, I just thought you nailed it. It was really, really well done.
Thank you.
Can I just say for just a second, the episode where Deborah does the small show to test out the new material and completely takes apart that male comedian, I was howling like when I watched that episode. So great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's so nice.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, let's love on each other. Let's do it. My favorite thing.
Everyone's
My
great.
favorite. They're all such good shows. These are, like, listen, comedy writers, we can be assholes. We can be like, oh, who's nominated this year? All right, all those shows are good. Like, for real, you're like, if any of those people win, I'd be happy. And that's not always the case.
Totally.
So
Meredith, there's a line in Girls Five Ever that I think about all the time now, which is she sings a song, Dawn sings a song about all the things she's afraid of.
Yeah.
And what is the line? I'm afraid that if I got cancer, I wouldn't be brave. I'd just be kind of angry.
I'm afraid
about
that
it.
if I got an awful disease, I wouldn't be brave. I'd just be a bitch and be mean. or that if I needed an emergency heart surgery, the doctor would go, hello, nipple hair. Next line.
It's really
Thank
good.
you.
That song is so funny, man. It's so good.
Oh, thanks. But oh my God, all of your shows are amazing. You guys all just like, it's also, you all are nominated for like 80 Emmys, by the way. So congratulations to all of you.
These are really good shows. So Meredith,
shows.
Go off of that, talk more. I had assumed that Sarah had written all the songs. So tell us about the music component.
Oh, well, it was really an interesting evolution because I thought from the beginning when I was developing it, because we had Jeff Richmond who did all the music and 30 Rock, Kimmy Schmidt, he's absolutely incredible, can like mimic any genre, and he's speedy. He's he's like a microwave. You just like put it in a boop, boop, beep, boop, and then here's a song. And so I always thought, okay, I'm in safe hands with him, and I'm not necessarily an amazing lyricist, but I can give him little snippets of things, and then he can cook it back and give me a hot microwaved meal of amazingness. But then I started out thinking of it like, worst case we'll see as much music on the show as you see sketches that are in 30 Rock. And then when we started getting this cast, we got these singers. We got Sarah, we got Renee, and Busy and Paula are no slouches as far as singing goes. And then it became really fun. The little snippets were like, oh, well, we could do more there. We could do more there. And then I gained more confidence as someone who could write lyrics. And Jeff and I and our writers also had a really fun rapport and just back and forth. And then it was like, oh, well, now we got to do the whole song of this. And it just made us want to write a million songs. For this cast and everything, it was delightful. It was one of the most wonderful experiences of this whole show, was the songwriting aspect of it. And like I said, and then because we also had a song that you really needed to believe in them. I mean, I wrote stupid shit like the splingy and stuff that has too many hard moves, but then we have, a song that you really want to believe in this group and get behind them as they, go forward in the season. And it felt like, okay, Sarah Bareilles is the person to write that song. We collaborated a little bit on it, but she really is the full muscle behind that. And it did the exact job that it needed to do and beyond. She's just incredible. So the music was so fun, and Jeff was just such a star, and always guiding me through everything. Like I'd send him a bunch of lines, and then he'd go, we need a new bridge here, or can you throw me a new verse? And I would just be like, hello, rhyme zone.
Well, you could feel that joy.
It was great. It was so fun. I loved it so much.
Now, Steve, talking about, you hit on this a little bit earlier when you were talking about shifting tone how do you guys do that in the room in terms of like her mind space and playing that out, and just you're really following her mental ups and downs and reality and not and drunk and sober, and how do you guys determine how to take us on that journey each episode?
I mean, I think even though the episodes end up turning into drunken fever dreams, it's still like, it's a room full of really skilled writers who really know a lot about structure and comedic structure. And so when we're building the episodes, like we write everything in a teaser 5-act structure, even though there's not commercial breaks on HBO Max. And so the show always feels that propulsive energy moving towards the next thing, even though a commercial break is not coming. It helps us a lot with driving Cassie and then Cassie driving the plot. But also having a show that moves the way that the flight attendant moves opens the door then for you to just kind of go off on an insane tangent, to have Cassie digging in the bushes for shredded paper that she can like tape back together to find this thing. And it's the stupidest idea in the world. And then it works. I mean, the thing that we wanted the most out of the character and really being inside her thought process was, I want people sitting at home watching the show being like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Don't do that. Like, that's the energy that we're cultivating in our audience. Like, you're rooting for her, but also couldn't she be a little less messy about everything? And so once we kind of found that groove and really hoped that that's what people were going to respond to, it really kind of clicked in the writer's room. Okay, this is what we're doing. This is what a misadventure for Cassie looks like. And then all of a sudden it became about the pieces and the bits.
Yeah, that's really great. And then Brendan, I'm going to give you a compliment that's not going to sound like a compliment, but it is. So all of these other shows are women-led, which I, as a female, I am drawn to those shows. It takes a lot for me to watch a white guy do stuff. It really does. So it really speaks to how great Ted Lasso was, because he's a nice white guy and he's really earnest. And I think we need that in the world right now. So can you talk about the likability of the character and the earnestness of the character? And did that start with Jason, or how? It's just rare to see somebody like that on TV. And I think it's really healing and a great thing to have out there. So can you take us through the journey of how Ted Lasso became Ted Lasso?
Sure, yeah. So going back to the commercials, the first one we did, he's a loud, ugly American. We tried to take a British style of making fun of Americans, basically. And it was, full commitment, shouting a lot, insults, etc. And was very, very fun, but not something you can do a lot with. But then we came back the next year to do it again, and the plot sort of at that point was he'd been fired from living in England, and now he just missed it. He had this sort of longing for it, and now he liked soccer, so he coaches his girls team, and he just kind of morphed into this much more thoughtful, curious guy, sort of like, if looking at like improv style, almost like that version of the character that exists for like 2 minutes in one commercial, that was like then the offer that the whole rest of Ted Lasso comes from. The character itself is drawn largely from coaches that Jason has had in his athletic times, but I think all the four of us have had mentors or teachers who were by no fault of their own, cisgendered white dudes, born this way. And we're all nice, we're really nice, especially some of our Midwestern guys who we've had. So we're just channeling people who we've known and not making up some, as crazy and fictional a notion as it might seem to be. Because like we all think that kind of goodness toward oneself and toward each other does exist, and certainly should exist. So we're just kind of drawn from stuff that we've actually encountered, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's lovely and healing. It gives people permission to be kind and decent, and I think that's why people love it. We're going to take some questions from the audience now, everybody. So people want to know, do you recommend improv for writing comedy?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. I think improv, if you do a Herald, which is the improv thing everyone does, it's all about taking a premise and heightening the premise multiple times, which is really kind of what you're doing in a writer's room. And also to be a television writer is very social. And you have to be it's kind of a no assholes policy, really, if you're going to do well in the room, I think. And improv is all about building on what the last person said. Yes. And if you're a no but person, you better like go write a novel or something, or make an indie film alone starring just you. But I think the yes and just the way you have to do the scenes is just 100% part of what it's like to be a writer in a writer's room. And it absolutely improved my comedy when I was starting out and trying to be a writer. That was like the first thing I did, was to take classes and do improv.
Second question is, how do the showrunners find their writers?
A combination for us. I think there were some people that we had already worked with, and so that was a large portion of it. Some came from recommendations. I think maybe Jen's assistant recommended somebody who we eventually hired.
Yeah, yep, that was true. She did. And yeah, we just read a bunch of scripts and knew we were looking for some new voices, as well as, yeah, there were some people that we had worked with before, and that's kind of how the room came together.
And yeah, other people that people recommended. A lot of that we definitely didn't know everybody, which was cool too.
Yeah.
For the flight attendant, we had a deluge of scripts come in from submissions from agencies. And I just want to give props to Yes Norman, which is Kaylee's production company, and Erica Canera Berlanti. The women at those two companies read, I don't know how many scripts, and vetted through. And I was like, I only want stuff with like weird psychological non-realism, and it needs to be funny, but also someone should die. And so, like, given those parameters, like, they were able to like narrow it down to a group of writers that we could meet with. But I would still be reading sampled submissions for the flight attendant if not for Mackenzie, Suzanne, and Erica.
Yes, the assistants reading. I remember those days. Okay, do you all have the pilot written when you pitch your shows? Some did, some didn't, right? Based on the
We
script.
did not. No, we did not.
No.
Meredith might have been the only
I
one,
did.
right?
We did.
Brendan, you guys did because you would come back to it?
Yeah.
And try to write it on spec, kind of?
Yeah.
How helpful are your agents in selling your shows, or was it your own hustle that got the show sold?
Well, we actually pitched this during the time when none of us had agents. So for this specific thing for Hacks, it wasn't maybe relevant for that.
Okay, this is a long one. Let's see here. Given we've all seen how comedy can influence culture, I'd love to hear about whether they were aware, Brendan or Paul, Lucia, Jen, whether they were aware of how groundbreaking it was to have shows show hot women be over 40. I almost fell out of my chair when in Hacks, Poppy Lou's character said Deborah was gorgeous without adding for her age. Interesting.
Well, it helps when she really is beautiful and you're
Yeah.
just commenting
It
on
is
it.
beautiful.
I mean, there's no caveat to Jean Smart's beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's not something we were setting out to do. It's just, Hannah's beauty is a truth we hold to be self-evident. So there it is.
It's true. They're hot ladies. If a writer is looking to get into a writer's room, should they be able to write an episode of that show, or would you rather see an original script?
think you're not allowed to read an
We're not allowed to
episode
read, right?
of your show for legal reasons. So it used to be that you would write a spec of one of the most popular shows of the day. You'd write it, Cheers, a Family Ties, whatever, Parks and Rec, even, or The Office up to then. And then now I feel like everyone seems to write original pilots, and you just read their pilots. Or even, I think that people are getting staffed because everyone's looking for new voices, and so one act plays are popular, not quite as popular right now, but they were popular for a while. Even like, I like to read people's Onions if they worked at the Onion, I'll read their Onion headlines, I'll read their tweets, I'll read the Reductress if they work there, all kinds of stuff. It's like, if you can see potential in a lot of different ways that isn't necessarily a script, but it's always great to have a script too. It helps.
Generally speaking, how do you guys feel? Because I still love specs. I love to read a spec because pilots are so hard, especially for baby writers. And I understand, like with so many shows, I think that the reason the spec market, people stopped writing specs, is because the showrunner might not know all of those shows. So it would be maybe a waste of time. But I think when you're in a room, you're more of a mimic than you are like bringing your original voice usually, unless there's something that the showrunner needs from you. So do you guys like reading original pilots when you're staffing?
Yes.
I've never read anything else. I've never read one spec.
I would be
it never came across my desk.
I would be delighted to read a spec though. Like I actually would love that. Like I kind of been with you, Gloria. Like I sort of miss that people used to write specs, and I would happily read one.
Great to hear. Okay, Sarah, when Brendan referenced having the right idea 7 years before its time, is he referring to the kindness theme of Ted Lasso being perfect for the moment? How does he account for the show being so good? It was hatched when he couldn't consume dystopia and cynicism fast enough.
No, I was just referring to the fact that we had those commercials so long ago.
They put a lot of mustard on that comment, I think.
But the kindness bit coming out when the world was absolutely in the toilet was just our sweet, sweet luck.
Okay, how do you ensure representation of your cast in the writers' rooms? I.e., Ted Lasso has a number of characters from all over the world. Are they represented people in the writers' room? But this question is for everyone. From Priya.
Boy, if we had all the countries on Ted Lasso in our writers' room, that would be a pretty damn international room. Our main concern is representing England appropriately. Because there's only the two American characters, and in the writers' room we have two Brits. But yeah, I don't know. I guess we just try to assume everyone's good and good people, and we write them that way.
Anybody else?
I just try to find the most, people with different perspectives, backgrounds, experience levels, everything. Like the more it feels like you're not getting the same kind of person over and over again, the better your show is going to be. So that's my goal.
Yeah, same with us. It was, I think, really important for us to have people, with different perspectives, but also that did represent, different orientations and people of color in the room, and even women who were over 60. We had, writers who contributed to the show who also were closer in age to Deborah Vance's character than Jen, Lucia, or myself. So, I think the more diversity you can get in terms of everything, including age, is really important.
We really tried to make it as intersectional as possible.
That's great. Where do you draw the lines from Scout? Where do you draw the line between drama and comedy in your writer's room? Is there something that you would consider too dark or too dramatic to include in your shows, or is everything fair game?
I think everything is fair game, but I think for us, it's about the balance. For us, we never want to have something be too broad or sketchy. or too melodramatic. And that's something that we are constantly testing and tweaking. And whether that's from what is on the page to the performances to the final edit, I think for us, and that's just our personal, I think, tone that we're going for, is we're just constantly always just bringing in the two sides so that you can have something that's laugh out loud funny, but also hopefully makes you cry in the same scene, sometimes in the same sentence. But as long as those things coexist in a way that feels like it's still balanced and never too far in the direction, then I think that for us, it's the tone we're going for.
It's similar thing for the flight attendant. I think for every show, it's like where those two things handshake, like where that location of that handshake is different for different shows, but that's what we're always looking for. And I will say that, and this has been true in other comedy, just straight comedy rooms that I've been in, like some of the funniest things in the show came from some of the darkest, absolute darkest conversations about alcoholism, PTSD, abuse, like things like that we handle on the show. So I agree that, nothing's off limits, but then you have to figure out what's appropriate to go in your actual show.
And I think in addition to that, and someone just commented that Deborah Van says there is no line. I do think, and nothing's off limits, like Steve was saying, but it's also about the execution of it, and also about, the way in which you're making the joke or telling the story, and what your target is. So you're making sure, if you can, never be punching down, because I do think it's all in the execution, and that really anything is fair game.
Yeah.
And also, it's so interesting to me how a death on Flight Attendant would be so different than a death on Girls Five Eva. Like how it's dealt with, and how one of the beauties of comedy, and how broad it can be. So all of your shows are so fantastic. Thank you guys for making me laugh during a very dark time. I want to thank all of our amazing panelists today for talking about their wonderful, wonderful shows. If you have not seen these shows yet, please check them out. They really are fabulous and so easy to get through. Thank you guys so much for being with us today and talking about your beautiful work, and congratulations on your nominations.
Thank you
Thanks
so
so much.
much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Wonderful.